We have ranked the ACC coaches. We turn our attention to the Pac-12 tonight here at the Voice of College Football. Welcome in, everyone. Great to see you here on a college football Wednesday night. No, we're not going to see any games until September. No, we haven't seen any games until the first week of January. But here at the Voice of College Football, it's always a college football Wednesday night, especially 8 o'clock Eastern time, with your calls coming in at 860-499-3332. And again, a couple news and notes that we're going to get into regarding Georgia Louisville signing a series. But our big two topics of the night concern Pac-12 head coaches. We are going to rank them 12 all the way up to number 1, and also get a another perspective as Tony Syracuse from Last Word on College Football is set to join us. And also there was an article on the ESPN college football site today concerning new ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips and the challenges that he faces. We're going to run through the article, and I will give my thoughts on the ACC challenge to keep up with the SEC and the Big Ten. That might surprise some ACC fans, keeping up with the Big Ten in football. They haven't been able to do it on the field. We had a comment come in. This was about a month ago to the show where I was asked to compare the ACC and the Big Ten over the past 20 years. I posted that video. Please check out the results of the comparison between the ACC and the Big Ten. Certainly the ACC falling far behind those two conferences, in particular in money. And we will check out the article. I read it a couple times over today. We will look at it. And, of course, take your calls once again at 860-499-3332. We will get the number to the bottom of the screen on the ticker. But first, take your eyes, gaze them toward the bottom of the screen, lock it in right there. Shop Amazon using the Amazon link in the description section of any of the videos. Please grab that link, put it somewhere where you'll remember it when you do your shopping. And this is just, man, this could take care of the channel right here. This in and of itself, with about another 5 to 10 revenue streams, could do it. So please help us build the channel by doing your Amazon shopping using the link in the description section of the videos. The Pac-12 and the ACC on display today here at the Voice of College Football. And, of course, you can contribute individually there at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. All right. We will get to the Pac-12 momentarily. Want to remind you that we've got content coming your way every day, multiple times per day. Today, we have already posted a video early this morning. That was so long ago at the Voice of College Football when it's 8 o'clock at night, and we're looking forward or back, I should say, 10 or 12 hours to what we posted this morning. That was so long ago, I don't even remember what we posted this morning. So I typically send out a post. I do send out a post. Not typically. I do send out a post weekdays, Monday through Friday at 5 a.m. Eastern time. So as soon as you wake up bright and early, unless you're up even earlier than 5 a.m., and if you are, God bless you, or you're crazy, 5 a.m. every weekday, we've got a post going up. And then, of course, 2 o'clock Eastern time, Ohio State Buckeyes live, then Florida State Seminoles live at 6 o'clock Eastern time. Just hit a lively show with Logan Robinson and Jason Parker. I caught just enough time in between Florida State's live show and us sitting here right now together to talk college football to cut an LSU segment that will be released in the morning as well. All right, let's dive into the ACC, and then I'll check out the live chat and, of course, take your calls at 860-499-3332. Jim Phillips taking over for Mr. John Swofford, longtime ACC commissioner, and most of the challenges center around money, I will say, and mindset. Phillips took over last month. I'm going to comb through this article and hit the high points. We want to credit Andrea Adelson and David Hale for their work on this article. And so Jim Phillips has been touring the ACC, stopping off at campuses, probably most of this done by Zoom, and assessing the ACC. And as he has received his, what they quote as blunt assessments of the league in football, this is strictly a football article. And that's all we talk about here, of course, despite the efforts of some to call in and talk about other things. Football, we talk about football here all the time. Of course, there are some other things, especially when talking ACC. The sport of men's basketball needs to be addressed to a certain extent because it is a basketball conference. But you get the feeling in the assessment of the league that to thrive big time in the more lucrative of the two sports, football is going to have to be emphasized, and they're going to have to shake that tag as a basketball league. ESPN spoke with 16 athletic directors and football coaches from across the league. They all believe that Phillips is the right man for the job. Well, that's easy to say now, but that might be an honest assessment. We don't know. Okay. The trajectory of the conference, though, from a football standpoint, is not amazing. I have stated in recent years that I believe that the ACC, from a recruiting standpoint, is in a good position geographically. Because regardless of where Boston College is and Syracuse and Louisville to a certain extent, but mostly Boston College and Syracuse are the two schools in the league that are not in prime recruiting territory, that everybody else is in a good position to recruit, to stay home and recruit in the region. That mid-Atlantic to southern region for the ACC, they're in better position than the Big Ten to compete in football long-term in terms of where the bodies are. Where is the talent? The talent is in California, Texas, and the Southeast. Most notably, of course, there's talent everywhere to a certain extent, especially in those places in Ohio and Pennsylvania. So the ACC, from a recruiting standpoint, especially following that 2016 season, which they jumped up and were playing on level with the SEC, in that particular year, I thought that they were in good shape to continue that momentum. But they're not bringing in the money. It may surprise some people out there that the SEC is not bringing in, at least in the most recent accounted football season, which would be the 2019 college football season, not 2020. They haven't made that public yet. Going back to 2019, the last full college football season, of course, that the Big Ten per team brought in $7 million more than the SEC. Not than just the ACC, but when comparing the Big Ten and the ACC, you're talking about a gap of over 17. No. More than that. The Big 12 was number 3 at 37 million. The ACC was number 4, and right there with the Pac-12. The Pac-12 and the ACC, we'll get to the exact numbers, but the Big Ten brought in like $25 million per team more than the ACC. The Notre Dame situation in football is going to have to be addressed as well. Phillips is going to be assessing the divisional alignment, which right now isn't working well for the conference. But at the same time, that's not because it was done poorly. Those divisions make sense, generally make sense. It's just a fact that Clemson is dominating. And again, the league's image is of a basketball league. And that's not necessarily good when it comes to the bankroll. So again, Phillips is combing the league, talking to people, talking about television contracts, talking money, talking about football on the field, talking recruiting footprint, support staff. So he's asking about, he said this in the interview with ESPN, that he wanted to get at the issue of recruiting. So right now, as I stated a couple weeks ago, the SEC has the most players in the NFL, of course, but the Big Ten has a decided advantage over the ACC in NFL players. In this most recent NFL season, the SEC was around 330, the Big Ten around 280, and the ACC was just over 200 players in the NFL. And if you take into consideration the number of players per team, then that jumps up the Big 12 because there's only 10 teams in the Big 12 compared to 14. And the Pac 12, there are actually more NFL players per team on the current rosters from the Pac 12 and the Big 12 than the ACC even. The total number looks better for the ACC with the 14 teams, but per team, it's the Pac 12 and the Big 12 as well. So the relevance within the Power Five. Florida State would be mostly to blame. Miami would be even more so to blame because Florida State's been good more recently. But Florida State having fallen off the cliff since 2016-17 in that range. Virginia Tech, certainly under Frank Beamer, was a national player in the 90s into the 2000s up until about 10 years ago, and they've fallen off considerably. That's hurt. Okay, when talking about the financial forces in college football, the Big Ten and the SEC rule college football. Okay. Based on the current TV deals driving most of this number, the Big Ten brought in $54 million last season per team. The SEC, $45 million. The Big 12 was third at $37 million. Then you'd have to run through the numbers to get the exact between the Pac-12 and the ACC. The ACC was still slightly above. The Pac-12 saw a small increase in total revenue in 2019, $3 million more per team than the ACC. So the ACC was last in 2019. So it went Big Ten, $54 million, SEC, $47 million, Big 12, $37 million, Pac-12, $30 million, ACC, $27 million. So the Big Ten brought in twice as much money per team and therefore overall than the ACC. Do 27 times 14, somebody out there. 27 times 14 is 270 times, it's somewhere around 350 million. So the Big Ten was around 700 million. And so what's going to make this worse for the ACC is that the television contract for the ACC runs through 2036. So they will not fully renegotiate until 2036, where the SEC just signed a new TV deal with ESPN, a new 10-year deal that is further going to increase the revenue starting in 2024, just 3 football seasons from now. And then the Big Ten's current deal runs out in 2022-23. So in January of 23, which is only 2 years away, which is only roughly 1.5 years away, the Big Ten will be able to renegotiate. So the Big Ten and the SEC in the next 2 years are going to go out of sight financially, and the ACC is going to continue to lag behind. Now, while the current contract for the ACC runs out in 2036, there's an opportunity for the ACC. They have a window in there to do it's like a check-in window to basically say, hey, we're doing better than the contract would stipulate. Can we get some more money? But that doesn't sound like it's going to be significant. The conference, meaning the ACC, is not immune to financial woes caused by the pandemic. Okay. The pandemic hit every conference, but not equally. And the more money you have when you're a have versus a have not, the Big Ten and the SEC were more prepared to handle the pandemic and the hit than the ACC. At Virginia Tech, for example, athletic director Whit Babcock said the athletic department took in about $47 million less in revenue. Now, they made a lot of cuts and made adjustments, and so they're only going to take about a $15 million hit at Virginia Tech, but that sounds like that's going to be one of the better results for the PAC, for the ACC, is a $15 million loss for one school. Most of those losses per team, per athletic program in the ACC is going to be between 20 and 40 million. All right. Now, one positive possibly for the ACC that at least mitigates this, if this is accurate, that it says another ACC AD offered similar thoughts on spending. Sure, the SEC has more money coming in, but several SEC schools are spending that revenue before the checks have cleared. A smarter approach to spending, investing in assets with a financial return over gaudy new facilities, avoiding massive buyouts after bad coaching hires can offset some of the gap between the ACC and the SEC. So he's basically saying, let's not fire coaches with huge buyouts, and let's not invest in ridiculous new facilities. But while that some of that might be valid to circumvent some of that gap, you do want to have gaudy facilities to bring in the great recruits and prepare your football teams to win games. And every conference is going to have is going to make mistakes in the hiring process. So he's basically saying reduce the margin of error. And that's great. That's a great approach. You should try to do that. Florida State, Virginia Tech, and Louisville are combined at 12 and 19 in the past few seasons. So the ACC network did not get off to a good start in regards to having an impressive or shiny new product on the football field to present. And then there's the image issue, as we addressed off the top. Basketball, men's basketball rules the ACC. Duke, North Carolina, they're at the base of the conference. The conference is housed in North Carolina. The ACC network is generally in North Carolina, although many of those facilities moved to Bristol, Connecticut in the last couple of years. Much of it is operational in Charlotte, but more so the league offices are in North Carolina. North Carolina's basketball country. The ACC is ruled in basketball in the past, and therefore there's still a mindset that college basketball is number one. And that probably hurts the perception of the football league. It does. Doesn't probably hurt. It does. So when you got an athletic commissioner coming in, well, he doesn't want to prioritize one sport over the other. So he basically has stated, we're going to stay strong in basketball, but we need to catch up in football. Phillips doesn't see it as a zero-sum decision, but suggested the ACC must prioritize its biggest revenue stream across all schools. Biggest revenue stream, football. Even in a basketball league, football makes the money. Nearly all the athletic directors and coaches we spoke to suggested the massive gaps in revenue present extensive challenges for all the schools, affecting the ability to retain assistant coaches, hire support staff, and placate fans and boosters when the SEC and the Big Ten have far deeper pockets. One AD in the SEC or in the ACC says, I have no illusion of overtaking the Big Ten or the SEC financially, but I'm optimistic that we can maintain the gap. Basically, the optimism is to maintain the gap. Well, that doesn't sound very good. All right, do not be calling the old call-in number. Actually, as of April 1st, that's going to go away anyway because I paid the bill for the last time. So that's going to expire here on April 1st anyway, and I can't pick up that call. we will go to the phone lines up. There was a call coming in on the phone line of 860-499-3332, but they must have hung up. So if you'd like to make a call, please do. I will remind you one more time to direct your attention toward the ticker at the bottom. Please shop Amazon using the link in the description section. Help us build the channel. We want to be here 6 months from now. Like to be here a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, doing what we love. And I believe you guys enjoy it as well, because we do get great comments from all of you. All right, let's get to it. DeAndre's on the line. DeAndre just checked out our last live stream on Florida State. We thank you so much, DeAndre, for the contributions. And I want to hear what you got on recruiting.
Well, that's what my question is going to be about. Why was Syracuse so successful in the 80s and 90s getting players, and now they're having trouble now? And I'm going to assume that a lot of these players came out of Connecticut, Boston. I know you said there may not be a lot of talent out there, but I'm thinking they came out of that area. I think White Freeman is from Connecticut, somewhere that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to know why Syracuse having so many issues after being so successful. When I was a child, 2000s, I really don't remember Syracuse, but 80s and 90s, they were a really good program. Second question, I think, man, you talked about this. What's the effect of some of these schools being in the city?
So in regards to Syracuse,
I'm sorry, a car just ran into somebody else. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, what was the second point?
What's the effect of most of these ACC schools being city schools? Like I said, building urban areas or around urban areas, like Miami, Boston College, State in a way, but State got room to grow. Georgia Tech. I don't know about Syracuse. Wake Forest is built inside of Winston-Salem too.
Well, my answer to the first question would be that we would have to review the rosters of Syracuse football going back to the 80s and 90s and up till today to see where the players are coming from. But we can about guarantee that they're coming from the region, and then they're going to Florida. And they're not taking out the best players in Florida, of course. They're taking down the third and fourth tier players in Florida. But New York's a decent football playing state. It's decent. New Jersey's really good. It's a top 10 football playing state. And Connecticut, actually, people would be surprised if you looked at the top couple players out of Connecticut. They're really good. I saw a list of 4-star players across the nation in Connecticut, and I'm here in the state. Not that I'm an expert on Connecticut high school football by any stretch, but it's a pretty high level of brand of football, considering there's only the population in Connecticut's only like 4.5 million people, something like that. It might not even be that much. So you might be surprised there. But in terms of course, it's football. You need masses of players, and they're just not up in this area. So that's always going to be a challenge for Boston College and Syracuse. It just is, but I don't know what they were doing. And it's especially interesting what the point that you bring up about the 80s and 90s is because you would think maybe Syracuse was taking players from Florida, as the Ohio States and the northern teams, Notre Dame and Michigan, were in the 70s when Florida State and Miami were awful and barely could field teams. But Florida State and Miami were thriving in the 80s and 90s. So Syracuse, yeah, they were really good up until pretty much the time Donovan McNabb stepped off campus. They were pretty competitively nationally, and then they just went off the table and really have never recovered. So the inner cities, yes. Yeah. Again, we'd have to survey the comparison between the ACC and the other conferences. It's much more urban than the SEC. So you make a good point there.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, Miami, Atlanta, Boston, and other places.
Well, I'm just saying, if you look at let's say the ACC and the SEC.
Yep.
To my knowledge, most of the SEC, buy land and build. But like I said, Georgia Tech, Miami, Boston College especially, they can't build those. They can't build at those schools. I don't know about UVA. Pitt has a hard time building them because I've been up there. So that's why I say some of these schools may not have the area to build in. Because I don't know if you've ever been to Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah.
But where Pitt University is located at, I think it's like a good 20 minutes of drive just to play the game. So, and when I went up there, I was joking with my cousin. I said, it's safe to go around here. And she made an all-color remark. And she said, let's look at the other people that's around you. Because we was in a big urban area. And I'm like, dang. Like, you see streetwalkers, but it's on the camp. The hotel was on the campus of Pitt. So I'm like, that's the stuff that I look at.
You also have two colleges. I don't think there are any others that don't have their own stadiums in the ACC, and that just doesn't happen in the SEC or the Big Ten or anywhere else. I don't believe anymore now that the pro teams are,
and look at Georgia.
Are out of LA and in their own nice new stadiums.
And then look at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, that was the first on-campus facility, I believe, and it's one of the oldest. So think about that for a second. I mean, maybe they just don't have rooms to grow in those areas.
Could be. Could be.
What's that, Robert? I mean, I'm just throwing it out.
Yeah. So the financial figures do not look good for the ACC. And they don't look to get better based on what we just read via ESPN today, that even the Pac-12 made more money per team than the ACC this past season by $3 million per team. And the ACC contract is still 15 years away from, even though there's going to be a check-in where they can adjust, they got 15 years before they're going to be able to renegotiate a contract, while the SEC just signed a new one and the Big Ten's up for another one here, and the Big Ten's already making twice as much money per team as the ACC.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about that more. I had other people talking to me. But I keep listening to the show.
Thanks,
if I come up with something else, because I'm being rushed. Oh, tell the dude that David Gerard was the best quarterback in East Carolina history, best player. A lot of good players came out of that school.
Absolutely. All right, DeAndre. We appreciate it. Have a good one. All right. As I touted last week, we were going to be looking at conference coaches throughout this week. And so on Monday, I released my ACC coaches rankings. I have my Pac-12 coaches rankings here, but I would first want to hear from our special guest tonight, Tony Syracuse from Last Word on College Football. Tony, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I am doing just fine. And I got to tell you, Tony, as soon as I determined that I was going to run through this, 5 days during the week, it fits perfectly with the Power 5, one per day. And once I got near Wednesday, and I thought, you know what? This will match up nicely. And I would love to hear what Tony has to say about Pac-12 running down.
But I got a real quick comment. Because while I was backstage, the caller who was on just a couple minutes ago,
yes,
talking about the ACC in urban areas, I invite him to visit Blacksburg and Virginia Tech and tell me it's an urban area, because it ain't. Or go to Tobacco Road. I get it. I get it. I get Miami. I get Boston.
And North Carolina well.
I do. I've got a daughter going to school out there. I know the area really well. I get Boston College, even though it's Chestnut Hill, which is a suburb of Boston. It's not really in Boston. I get Miami. To your point, they're not even playing in their own stadium. But go to Tobacco Road and tell me that those schools are built in urban areas. Not so much. The SEC is a little different because a lot of those were land grant schools when they were built, and so it's a little bit different. Anyway, sorry, I had to throw that in because as he was saying that, I'm like, dude, go. I appreciate what he's saying, but the first thing that popped up into my mind was go to Virginia Tech, because it's about as rural as you can get.
Yeah, and of course, it seems as though half the conference is located in the state of North Carolina,
Right, sure.
and so the likes of Raleigh, Durham, and Winston-Salem, they're
Chapel Hill.
they're. I've only been around those areas, so I'm not speaking from a knowledge base, but they're, there's things to do, there's life, but they're not urban areas by any stretch.
No. They are truly an area built around the schools, and they exist for the purposes of the schools. Raleigh as a city has a little bit more to do. Raleigh, Durham as an entity right there really functions for the purposes of the school, as Winston-Salem and Chapel Hill and so on. Durham itself, they're really there to exist as a centerpiece for the schools themselves.
Well, I needed you a few minutes ago because I took what he said and I went with my reference points.
That's okay. Sorry, as I was sitting backstage, I heard that, and those were just the things that jumped to mind.
Yeah, I'm more familiar with the SEC, which is certainly no Baton Rouge and Lexington would be the closest.
Yeah.
Columbia, possibly South Carolina
Knoxville.
would be the closest to Knoxville. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But again, a lot of those schools were land grant schools, and so they were really given as much as they needed in an area that was designed for them, and build it out to whatever you need. So different concept.
So again, we're ranking the coaches this week.
Yes, we can get on topic now.
And it's a difficult task because not everyone has the same facilities and resources and opportunity to win. It's not like ranking coaches, let's say in the NFL, where generally everybody's got the same amount of money and same draft picks, draft order. All of that's uniform. It's, to compare somebody who's trying to win at USC versus somebody who's trying to win at Oregon State. Well, then you have to just weigh the opportunity and the resources versus the product on the field. So it's an interesting task. So we give it to you here first, Tony. It'd be interesting to see how it lines up for you.
Yeah, let me tell you, my friend, you gave me a hard task, and I'm going to say I have one of the hardest tasks of your guests discussing such topics, because I get Carl Durrell with 1 year. I get Nick Rolovich with 1 year. I get the coach at Washington, Jimmy Lake, with 1 year. I get a coach in Arizona with no years.
And those aren't even really a year.
Right, exactly.
Those are 4 games. And
it's truncated COVID season. So you really handed me quite the task.
Well, that's your task. You are Mr. Pac-12.
All right.
So this is
and you have your list also, right?
I got my list right here. I do.
So
I want to hear from you. You're the guest, Tony. Want to hear from you first.
Okay. At number 12, for no fault of his own, I've got Jed Fish at Arizona, because he's coached exactly 0 games at Arizona. He comes in replacing Kevin Sumlin, who is being made very wealthy to not coach. He's being paid about $20 million to not coach. And Fish has got 20 years as an assistant in the NFL and college football, 1 year under Jim Mora as offensive coordinator at UCLA, but he's been a head coach in college football exactly 0 games, other than 1 game as an interim, a bowl game at UCLA after Mora got fired. That is his head coaching resume. So he's got to be number 12. Got no choice. Nothing personal, Jed. Number 11, I got to go Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. It's a tough job. I grant you that. Probably the only coach in the last 20 years that's had a modicum of success up there is Mike Riley, and even that came in spurts. Corvallis is not an easy place to recruit to. The selling pitch is minimal. Smith is entering his 4th year. This was his first head coaching job. Now, he played at Oregon State, so he was kind of a favorite son there. He played there from 98 to 2001. But right now, he is 9-22 overall and 7-18 in conference. Again, look, it's Oregon State. They've been good in spurts over the last 20 years. They've had, some halfway decent players, and it lasts for about 2 to 3 years with some random upsets, up in Corvallis. But when they're under the bright lights and on the big stage, they generally don't play very well, and they've never been able to sustain it. The only thing Smith has going in his favor right now is that he is not as bad as his predecessor, Gary Anderson, who was 7-29 after 3 years. So that's what he's got going for him. And it doesn't look like it's going to get a lot better because his recruiting class for the upcoming year is ranked 109th in the country and last in the conference. So keep your thoughts and prayers alive for Jonathan Smith because he's going to need them. Number 10, I've got Nick Rolovich at Washington State. He's entering his second year. Again, as you pointed out, wasn't even really a full year. Different teams in the Pac-12, and we've been over this so many times, how the Pac-12 really did themselves in by not starting until November, and there was no room for makeup games, and so if you lost a game to COVID, you just lost the game, period. They got in exactly 4 games last year out of what was supposed to be a 7-game schedule, and they went 1-3, and it was just harsh. Rolovich in personality and style seems like a perfect fit for the Palouse up there for Pullman. He's kind of rough around the edges. He's rugged. He's, when you talk to him, he's got, I don't remember if it's a deer or an elk or a moose head, something like that, mounted on the wall behind him. He's that kind of guy. But you also look at what he did at Hawaii. He had 4 years in Hawaii, and that's what he rolled into, getting this job at Washington State. But he only had 1 good year at Hawaii. And it was 2019, and they went 10-5, and they had Cole McDonald at quarterback. And I don't know if you remember McDonald. This kid was a gunslinger, man. He was a high wire act. He'd throw downfield 30, 40, 50 yards, dazzle you, and then he'd throw 3 interceptions. And, so he was 28-27 in 4 years at Hawaii. Again, it's Hawaii, not that easy to do there, but he rolled out 1 good year into this job, and obviously he's going to have to do better in the coming years, but his current recruiting class is ranked 60th in the country and 9th in the conference. So again, he's got a lot of work ahead of him. 9th, I've got Justin Wilcox at Cal. I like Justin Wilcox. I think he can coach. We just haven't seen it on both sides of the ball to this point. This is his first head coaching job. He's got 4 years under his belt. He's 21-21 overall, but he's 11-20 in the conference. So if you look at those 2 records, just go over those numbers again. 21-21, but 11-20. It tells you he's feasting on easy out-of-conference competition. And that's not going to be good enough because you're getting beat up in conference. Now, he is a defensive coach, very successful one. He's been at Boise State, SC, Tennessee, Washington, Wisconsin. He has done well as a defensive coordinator everywhere he goes, but he's yet to show a viable offense, even with good quarterbacks like Garbers, like he's got now. So he's got to show up on offense. He went 1-3 last season in a theoretical 7-game season, and he's only 1-1 in bowl games, and his bowl games have been the Cheez-Its Bowl and the Red Box Bowl. So it's time to step up, and it's time to step up like now.
He's all set for a Saturday evening, staying inside with your Cheez-Its and your Red Box movie.
Absolutely.
He's all set for
absolutely. Cheez-Its and chill or something like that. Yeah, definitely. 8. Here it comes, people. Here it comes. Chip Kelly. It's Chip. Look, he's going into his 4th year at UCLA, 10-21 Obviously, no winning seasons with a record like that. His 4 years at Oregon seemed like they were 3 careers ago at this point. It was 2009 to 2012, but man, it feels like a lot longer than that. 46-7 and 33-3 in those 4 years. Think about that. Think about that Chip Kelly and this Chip Kelly. It's wow. Up there, up in Eugene, 4 first-place finishes in the conference. 2 of them were before they had divided the conference into 2 divisions, so it was still in the Pac-10. But he had 2 in the Divisional North. He had a spot in the BCS title game. Wow, right? He was the college football offensive guru, and he's 10-21. Ouch. He had 3 horrible years in Philly in the NFL. He had a horrible year in San Francisco. Look, he was 28-35 in the NFL and parlayed that into an analyst job at ESPN and parlayed that into, a seeming bidding war between Florida and UCLA for the head coaching job. When does it turn around? When?
That 33-3, again, I don't know that people let that sink in. That's Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama territory. That's what they do.
Yep.
Is basically lose 1 game a year or 3 in 4 years,
Yep.
less than 1 game a year.
Yep. Yeah. And look, he's got a decent recruiting class. It kind of snuck up after signing day with some guys who came in from the transfer portal. We'll see. We published a Last Word on College Football a few weeks ago. We published a piece that said, this is it. This is it for UCLA and Chip Kelly. It's this year or not at all. It's time to say goodbye. If you can't get them to at least a Tier 2 bowl game this year, then it's time to say goodbye because it's just not going to work. He's got them this year. He's got the most experienced team he has ever had. Their pro day this last week ago, 2 players, because that's all they're losing off this year's team. It is the most experienced, is the most seasoned. A 3-year starter coming back at quarterback. This is it. It's time to put up or shut up for Chip Kelly. That'll give me a lot of leeway in the post-game press conferences, won't it? He'll be eager to call on me. Number 7, Carl Durrell. I like Carl. He's an affable guy. When he was at UCLA, he had a great reputation as everybody in the athletic department liked him. He remembered, the birthdays of the staff assistants and things like that. He was, nice guy. He's entering his 2nd year at Colorado. He was 4-2 last year, 3-1 in conference. I give him a lot of wiggle room because they were supposed to start spring camp about a week later than most other schools. He had no spring camp because while everyone else had maybe a week or a handful of days, as they were starting later, the shutdown came and with COVID. And he met his team for the first time over his Zoom meetings. That's how he met his roster. And that was the only way he saw them up until about July workouts. So he really had it cut out for him. Now, a lot of people will remember he was the head coach at UCLA. And from 2003 to 2007, his alma mater was a well thought of receiver back in the 80s. Was 35-27 and 24-18 in conference and got fired. And what UCLA wouldn't give to have those records right now. And of course that was before the Pac-12 divisional play. He never finished better than 3rd in the conference. That was actually his peak. Had a couple of 4th place and a couple of 5th place finishes. And like I said, got fired. He was unprepared for the job. He was unprepared to be a head coach at that point. Most of his work has been as an assistant coach. He's got 12 stops as an assistant coach in college football and the NFL, couple stops in Miami, Vanderbilt, you name it, he's been there. 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, 6 of them, 7 of them, 8 of them, 9 of them, 10 of them, 11 of them, 12 of them, 13 of them, 14 of them, 15 of them, 16 of them, 17 of them, 18 of them, 19 of them, 20 of them, 21 of them, 22 of them, 23 of them, 24 of them, 25 of them, 26 of them, 27 of them, 28 of them, 29 of them, 30 of them, 31 of them, 32 of them, 33 of them, 34 of them, 35 of them, 36 of them, 37 of them, 38 of them, 39 of them, 40 of them, 41 of them, 42 of them, 43 of them, 44 of them, 45 of them, 46 of them, 47 of them, 48 of them, 49 of them, 50 of them, 51 of them, 52 of them, 53 of them, 54 of them, 55 of them, 56 of them, 57 of them, 58 of them, 59 of them, 60 of them, 61 of them, 62 of them, he did a good job last year with some very young talent. He had a very young team. And so I think that the prospects for him are positive going forward. We'll see what he can do with an actual training camp and some summer workouts and presumably a full season. But he didn't have a good recruiting class. It finished 64th in the country and 10th in the conference. So he's going to have to rely a lot on that returning talent. 6th, I've got Jimmy Lake at Washington. I think Jimmy Lake has got a lot of ability. We just haven't seen a lot yet because, again, with what happened last season, it was his first year as the head coach. They went 3-1. They actually won the Pac-12 North and then couldn't play in the championship game because of COVID and had to default that spot to Oregon. He's been around Seattle a long time, spent 6 years on the coaching staff there as an assistant on the defensive side of the ball when Chris Peterson was the head coach there, and he got the job when Peterson stepped down. So this is his first head coaching job anywhere. Players like him. He's very energetic. You talk to them on Pac-12 media days and post-game interviews. They like him a lot of energy. Had an okay recruiting class. And what didn't start off very well, but finished strong, finished 36 in the country, 6 in the conference. So, but he lost a lot in terms of the draft and players leaving. He's got to replace 7 players on the offense and defense. So he's got his work cut out for him. So we have him at 6. 5, and I'm laughing about this because he is probably the most disliked coach by his own fan base in the conference, but he's better than they give him credit for. 5 is Clay Helton. Get over it, USC fans. He's better than you give him credit for. You don't like him. Every year you root for him to be fired, but he's entering his 7th year. He is a fact of life. He started in 2015 with a partial year when Steve Sarkisian went on his leave of absence. So he's been at SC actually since 2010, various assistant coaching positions, 2 stints actually as an interim head coach, which is kind of, I mean, the man's got staying power. He doesn't want to leave the school, and the school has no intention of leaving him anytime. But look, you look at a guy who's been there 11 years, who understands the USC mentality better than this guy. He's seen coaches come and go. He's been through a change in president at the university. He's been through changes in athletic director, 2 changes of athletic director during his tenure. So who gets it better than he does? He's 45-23 overall. He's 36-12 in the conference. SC fans, like I said, they hate him. The allegations against him from SC fans are that he underperforms with the talent he has. With the recruiting that he does, with the recruits he gets, he should do better. He's won the Pac-12 South title 3 times. He's finished 2nd another 2 times, and he's finished 3rd once. And here is the knock, and this is a legitimate knock. He's 1-3 in postseason play, and that's not going to cut it at SC. Really, if his teams don't make the Tier 1 bowl game, they tend to flatline at the end of the season. He tends to have a hard time holding the locker room together and keeping them motivated to play in the Holiday Bowl or the Sun Bowl or the Alamo Bowl. If it's not the Rose Bowl or, playoff game, which they haven't made, they tend to have a little bit of an emotional meltdown. So his one big win postseason is the 2016 Rose Bowl game against Penn State. He won the division last year, but the school had already committed to no postseason play, wrap it up, call it a season because of COVID. His recruiting class this year is outstanding. It's 8th in the country, 2nd in the conference. He lost a lot of talent at the skill positions. Another 2-3 wide receivers gone to the NFL. Lost a starting left tackle. So we'll see what he can do, but he's got a lot of talent coming in. The issue, again, is how he finishes the season. He struggles finishing strong. At number 4, you're gonna laugh at this one because I was a doubter. I was a doubter when it happened. But at number 4, we got Herm. We got Herm Edwards. I am on the Herm train. I like this guy. 7-13 in his 3 years so far. When he was hired, I thought it was one of the most bizarre hires in a long time, with no college football experience, no recruiting experience. His first Pac-12 media days was one of the most eccentric events I'd been to. I wasn't even sure he even knew who his players were, because he spent the entire time talking about his journey through his coaching years and really didn't answer any questions about his players at all. But you listen to his players a couple years later, and they have bought in. They like this guy. They will play for this guy, which is another problem Jed Fish is going to have, frankly, at Arizona, is Herm Edwards owns the desert right now. He owns the recruiting in that area. He owns the fan base in that area. His best finish so far, 8-5 2 years ago, but he was only 4-5 in conference that year. So there's a lot of work to do. He had a better finish in 2018 in conference when he was 5-4. He's 1-1 in bowl games. So we're ranking him based still on potential, because you just see it there. You see the recruiting stepping up. You see the players working hard for him. They're quoting Hermisms in post-game press conferences. They believe in this guy. And so I think it can really work. Number 3, I got Kyle Whittingham at Utah. He almost made number 2. And I'm not sure what the difference really was. He could have made number 2, maybe should have made number 2. 17 years in Utah at this point. Man, he has been there a long time. 134 wins, 66 losses over that time overall, 80-54 in conference. That includes his years in the Mountain West also, pre-2011, before the merger with when Utah and Colorado came over to the Pac to make it the Pac-12. He's got 7 bowl games in 10 years, 5-2 bowl record. All of those things are good. Look, his offense is never going to be exciting. It's never going to be the things that great journalistic pros are written about. His defense is going to hit hard. It's going to be physical. It's going to be the team you don't want to play on a Friday or Saturday night in Salt Lake City in mid-November, because it's going to hurt. It's going to be cold, and they're going to hit you hard. It's consistent. It's consistently good. Like I said, it's not going to light up the ESPN highlights and things like that, but it's going to be good. He's going to win. He's going to get to a second-tier bowl game guaranteed, with the occasional first-tier bowl game. And for a school in Salt Lake City, that's pretty darn good. It's not an easy place to recruit to for elite-level athletes. He gets a lot of guys that the other schools don't get, that they overlook, that the UCLAs and USCs overlook. He does a good job of recruiting in the islands and Hawaii and the Polynesian players. So yeah, I give him a lot of credit, because it's not an easy place to go. Number 2, I got David Shaw. There were a couple years ago when Shaw was my number 1. I like David, and part of it was personal. I like David Shaw. He's a thinking man's coach. You can ask him any question about any topic, and he will sit down and talk to you about it and have an intelligent conversation. It can be about X's and O's on a football field. It can be about what kind of classes college athletes should be taking. It could be about something you saw in the news the night before. He's got thoughts and opinions, and they're intelligent. But David Shaw isn't winning very much lately. Not enough. Not as much as he should be. 90-36 at Stanford in his 10 years. 62-24 in conference. He's got 5 Northern Division first place finishes, but they're not happening lately, right? He's got no bowl game in the last 2 years. 2020 was voluntary. They decided to shut down the season. Like, he had a tough gig last year. Stanford was a vagabond team. They literally moved around with no home games because the health department in that county was basically shutting them down. They spent 3 weeks in the state of Washington practicing and playing their games up there, playing against Washington State, and then going down to Oregon and so on. So look, it was tough, and they managed to go 4-2. But the year before, they went 4-8. And he's not had an elite level player really since Bryce Love, which is now 3 years ago. So they're struggling a little bit. He had a little bit of talent last year, but even that's gone. You know, Davis Mills the quarterback is going to the NFL. And, he was an above average quarterback. I don't think anyone was going to call him elite by any stretch. He's got a lot of holes to fill. And, Stanford finished third in the country back in 2015. Remember that really good Rose Bowl team, Christian McCaffrey, and they haven't even been close since then. So there's a lot of slippage in the David Shaw record. So he would have been first years ago. We dropped him to second, which only leaves obviously the one guy left, Mario Cristobal at Oregon. 25-10 overall going into his fourth year, 16-7 in the conference, finished second in the division last year at the end of the regular season, got into the Pac-12 title game because Washington couldn't play, wound up losing in the Fiesta Bowl 2 years ago. You look at the 2019 season, 12-2 overall, 8-1 in the conference, won the North, the Pac-12 North, won the Rose Bowl. These guys are good. He's really building something special again up at Oregon. Look, he was only on staff 1 year there. He'd been a head coach at Florida International before he got fired. Went on Alabama's staff, assistant staff for a while. Joined Willie Taggart up in Oregon. Hey, who remembers the Willie Taggart era up in Eugene? Right? Exactly.
1 year.
1 year. That's it. And he bolts. And Oregon right now is saying, thank goodness he did. We are far better off than we would have been with a Willie Taggart. He's got the number 6 recruiting class in the entire country coming in this year. Obviously, number 1 in the Pac-12. He is really building a physical team, a fast team, very energetic team. He's got it going on up in Eugene. So he is our number 1 Pac-12 coach right now.
Tony, I knew you would bring depth and insight and perspective on your list, and it's much appreciated because I usually do this solo, but I thought, man, I really want to hear what Tony has to say about his Pac-12 list. So I'm going to get to my list. I want to pay off a couple super chats real quick here. Falcon ERX, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. We appreciate that. The U, better than, okay, greater than plays at a pro stadium where the players will play in the future. No pro games in Alabama greater than South Carolina or Virginia.
I get what he's saying. Look, Miami plays in an NFL stadium. The Miami players some will eventually play there, so they get to see where they're going to play at the next level. No such thing exists at Alabama or South Carolina or Virginia or, some of those other states. I get it.
Yes.
I don't agree, but I get it.
I was reading a little bit too much into Alabama, South Carolina, and Virginia. I thought there was something special about those three. Okay. Point well taken there, Falcon ERX. But mostly thank you so much for the super chat contribution. And we had another one here. Oh, well, Falcon ERX just keeps coming at us. Nothing will replace the old Orange Bowl. Don Shula, let that go. Another reason to hate her.
I think that was Donna Shalala. When she was president, when she was the president of the University of Miami. Okay, I gotta tell you, I was there one time.
Yes.
And I know the fans of the U, the real U, the 80s U.
Yes.
And into the 90s U. They love that stadium because it was where they got it all done, right? It was where the greatest players in Miami history went to play. But having been there once, man, that place was a toilet. I mean, look, the amenities were non-existent. It was just, you go there, you sit on your little square, and that's that. And you're lucky if you get a warm beer and a cold hot dog, and But I get it. But I get the love that Miami fans have for it because that is the high point of their legacy.
Yeah, and if I recall from the ESPN 30 at 30, Donna Shalala's opening news conference made it kind of apparent that football was not her priority.
Yeah, nor was it even close to her. I was surprised she was able to find the football stadium, frankly.
Falcon ERX coming back at us here. As an older man now with 3 kids, Hard Rock is amazing, especially at the Notre Dame beatdown in 2017. That for a lot of Miami fans is the last time that they beat a quality opponent. All right, good stuff there.
I think most fans are going to like their stadium when they have memorable wins there. Whether that doesn't mean the stadium is good, but they like it. There's an emotional attachment to it because there was a quality win there.
All right, good stuff. Let's get to my coaching list here. 12 coaches in the Pac-12. And I got to say, Tony, probably 3/4 of the list were lockstep with each other, and then where we differ. Okay.
All right.
And I actually built a little list to coincide with mine graphically here. So Jed Fish at number 12. Now, understand, like Tony outlined, with any of these coaches, my typical approach to this, one of my tenets would be, if this is a new coach, especially if they haven't coached anywhere as a head coach, it's one thing if there's a well-established coach that moves from a conference to another conference or school to school, where you can say, okay, we generally know his performance level. Jed Fish, never been a head coach. Tony points out the one interim stop there at UCLA for the one game. But so I usually give those guys kind of a neutral rating typically. Mm-hmm. And then anyone that I would rate below them, I am basically ranking them based on I don't believe that they are meeting the expectations of the job. But as you go through these Power 5 coaches from conference to conference, I generally think most of them, the results are such that everybody's got to lose a game. Each game's played and there's got to be a loser on the field. So that doesn't mean that both coaches didn't prepare their teams and didn't do a good job. I generally think most of these guys across the Power 5 are doing capable job, that they're not in over their heads, that they're doing a decent job. So Jed Fish, again, very much an offensive background, offensive coordinator, passing coordinator at his various NFL stops, most notably with the Rams here in 2018 and 19. Ran Jim Harbaugh's offense. Most of these, I looked through the list, pretty pedestrian offenses, not very explosive, except for that Rams group that was a little bit more productive there in 2018 and 19. So we will see, with a difficult assignment there at Arizona. At number 11, I went Nick Rolovich there at 11. First year turned in at Washington State at 1-3. Again, we can't derive much from that 4-game total. Going back like Tony did to Hawaii, it's not going to knock you over at 15-17 in the conference, 28-27 overall. But he did take over a team that went 0-8, that went winless in the conference, and 3-10, build it up to generally like a 500 status, then broke out that final season in 10-5, which set him up for the Washington State gig at just 42 years old. So a lot of room for him to grow and develop and get better and do something there at Washington State, as his predecessor showed us.
Looks 55, but he is only 42.
42 years old. At number 10, and again, this is a conference that may be the most difficult because of the relative inexperience of these coaches. So this is not a knock against this guy, because there is so much out there that is stated in a positive vein about Jimmy Lake being a possible star in the making. But again, he's just getting into the process. Nothing wrong with his first season at 3-1. A lot of COVID issues with the league and with his team in particular. Takes over for legendary coach and Chris Peterson. And again, the reputation is first rate. Great mind on the defensive side of the ball, especially in the defensive backfield, in grooming a lot of NFL players. So he did a nice job his first season. I'm more in the wait and see mode with Jimmy Lake. And to a certain extent, although I'm impressed with what he did, at number 9 would be Carl Durrell, for a lot of the reasons that you stated, going to a program that's not got the greatest talent. And he pulls off a 4-2 season, 3-1 in conference play, taking it over for Mel Tucker there. The stop at UCLA was generally yes, as you pointed out, 35-27, but generally a 500 run. And then the one big year there in 2005 that you well remember was a bit smoke and mirrors. I think starting 10-0.
Right.
And then they got a wake-up call against USC.
Yeah.
That 05 USC club, but 24-18 for a Pac-12 record. 6 games above what was a better league then as well. So a good showing out of Durrell, off to a decent start there at Colorado. But as you mentioned, maybe some warning signs with the recruiting effort where it stands right now. At number 8, I'm right there with you, Chip Kelly. Wow, it's a dichotomy of the brilliance at Oregon. The NFL, there was the one promising season with the Eagles. He had a 10-6 year, and then it all fell apart. He had a lot of issues with relating to players at that level, and maybe relating to players at this level. He's not necessarily known as I don't want to tag him that way, but he's not known for being a guy that's that endearing.
Yeah, we don't know what he is. It's interesting because a lot of the things that he wants to do or has done with college players, monitor their nutrition, monitor their sleep patterns, look over their health. You can't do that in the NFL. They're grown men. They're going to tell you exactly where you can go with your monitoring. You can get away with it at the college level. It was an epic failure in the NFL. It's interesting because, he's not exactly outwardly Mr. Warm and Fuzzy. He's a very, very private person. I mean, exceedingly more so than most any coach I've ever met. Yet if you talk to the players, they sit there and say, "Oh my gosh, he's funny as can be. He's cracking up in the film room," and we're looking at Chip. Like he's hilarious. Like, all right, there are multiple sides to Chip Kelly, and he keeps it that way. And there is a very strong divide between the two sides. And publicly, he will never show you the one that he shows to his players and his friends.
What I struggle with is, again, the brilliance at Oregon, but also the and it was a good program when he got there. Mike Bellotti had done a nice job.
Sure.
But it was typically an 8-4 kind of program, and he just elevated them to the very top. Came within a whisker of winning a national championship.
Right.
And then, if you look at, he never just brought in superstar elite recruiting classes. They were good recruiting classes, of course. Right. You have to bring in talent. But what he inherited at UCLA, if you believe in recruiting rankings, very much mirrors what he inherited and also brought in himself at Oregon.
Absolutely. And yet, and I get it. Look, I think UCLA fans, their expectations were too high when he first came in. They thought they were going to see, a new version of what happened at Oregon. And the game has changed. The game is different. The game caught up to what Oregon was doing back then. You needed a new version of everything. We're still waiting to see what that new version is. And I think that's the biggest flaw. He is, and you look at the coaching staff, he's made some changes. He hasn't made changes. People have left of their own volition. And guys like, Jerry Neuheisel is the new wide receivers coach, and Ryan Gunderson from San Jose State is the new quarterbacks coach. And all those things are terrific. But he's also holding on to some of the worst parts of the staff. It's Jerry Azzinaro just got a new 1-year contract after 3 years of, and people have wanted to tell me that their defense improved last year. In some parts, I suppose, but they were ranked 114th in the country in passing yards given up. So improving in little spots here and there is not improvement. It's but Chip is fiercely loyal and fiercely stubborn, and those two things go hand in hand. And he's got some coaches on his staff that are older. They don't like the recruiting part. Chip is not known as an outstanding recruiter. Real quick story, because I don't want to cut off this list because you're doing great. But we did a piece about a week ago on UCLA running backs coach Deshaun Foster, and look, he took a walk on in Joshua Kelly, turned him into a back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher who's now playing for the LA Chargers. He took Demetric Felton, who was a wide receiver, turned him into an every down running back who is going to be, a slot hybrid, whatever in the NFL. And the scouts are telling us probably a 3rd-round pick after what he did at the Senior Bowl. And the biggest thing is he just got Zach Charbonnet to transfer from Michigan to UCLA. And the story we were told by recruiting people was that Charbonnet always wanted to go to UCLA, but he was underwowed, if I can make up words. He was underwowed by Chip Kelly. He wanted to play for Deshaun Foster. He was underwowed by Chip Kelly. He went with the bells and whistles of Jim Harbaugh. Didn't really work out the way he had hoped. So now he's going to just kind of swallow what he needs to swallow and learn to live with Chip for the chance to play for Deshaun Foster. That's where the recruiting is at UCLA.
I tuned into the opening night game against Colorado this past season and thinking Colorado is going to be one of the worst teams in the conference. Didn't turn out that way, but that was the reputation coming in. And I think I tuned into like a 21-0 game, just out of the game. And I'm like, oh my word, Chip Kelly's back at it here. This is looking bad. Now, I will say, did they lose the first 2 or 3?
They lost 2 out of the first 3.
2 out of the first 3. Then I see them pull off an upset against Oregon, or they barely lost to Oregon.
Yeah,
it was like 38-35.
With
great
their
game.
With their backup quarterback.
That's right.
Yeah.
And just watching them play down the stretch, and even though they should have won the USC game,
right?
And
Stanford. They blew leads.
Oh my
of them
goodness!
At the end of the game.
They blew that game against Stanford. My goodness, they had a big lead with just a couple minutes left.
Right.
That was when I was flipping around, and I couldn't believe when I got back to it. I was like, "What in the world happened here in like 90 seconds?"
Right.
But I thought that they were. The record's not going to show it, but I thought that they were a decidedly improved team. Like they played their best football under Chip Kelly, which isn't saying a whole lot.
Sure.
But it was this past season.
I agree with that, but it's time. It's got to show up on the field, and not enough with the we made improvements and we're getting there. This is year 4 of a coach making $4 million a year. It's time.
Now I do have Clay Helton down at 7, but you're right. He takes so much abuse from USC fans. They just think that he is just garbage, and he's not.
He's not.
He won a Rose Bowl. That team in 2016. He really pulled it together. Yeah. They got clubbed by Alabama out of the gate. They had to go to Utah on like a Thursday or Friday night. He's still trying to figure out who his quarterback is.
Right.
He figures out that it's Darnold. Right. They play a great game, but they lose at the wire. They're 0-2 out of the gate.
Yep.
And by the end of that season, they had beaten Washington, the college football playoff representative from the conference, by 2 scores. They ripped off whatever it was, 10 or 11 consecutive wins, beat a really good Penn State team in the Rose. That team was really good.
At the end of the season that year, frankly, they were probably one of the top 2 teams in the country.
Yeah.
They weren't going to get that look because of the 2 losses at the beginning of the season, but the way they were playing at the end of the season, they were one of the 2 best teams in the country.
And then they follow that up with an actual Pac-12 championship, even though the team wasn't as good. They won the Pac-12. The knock against him, again, it's not winning at USC, Pete Carroll, John Robinson, John McKay level by any stretch. But 36-12 in the conference, as you outlined, that's 3 out of every 75%. That's it's strong. I am going to say, though, to back up statistically the point that you made, against big opponents, they play in a Cotton Bowl against Ohio State, and they're not competitive. A couple of years there against good Notre Dame teams, not competitive.
Right.
11-15 against ranked teams.
Right.
So a large portion of that's against the conference ranked teams.
Right.
And not playing well.
Well, and again, it's we're talking about the year they beat Penn State in the Rose Bowl, and they finished really strong. And when you look at his years, that turns out to be an aberration. They often don't finish strong. Some of those Notre Dame games that are at the end of the season, at the Coliseum, and they don't finish strong, or they don't finish strong in a bowl game that isn't a premier level bowl game. So it's those last 2 to 3 games per year on a regular basis that tend to come back to haunt him.
As statistically and metrically driven as my lists typically are, this is where I kind of sway off the rails and go a bit with my, it's not with my heart, it's just with a vibe, a feel. I have always just thought Justin Wilcox was a very capable coach, and that at Cal, as you mentioned, 21-21, 11-20 in the Pac-12 is not backing up my point. This is his 5th year. I wrote right here, it's time. Much like you said with Chip Kelly. Okay, it's time. Not that Cal's going to be winning 10 and 11 games a year, but an 8-4, a 9-3 type of year where they seriously contend for a division. They've played those games where they've beaten a Washington. They've won these games, and to his strength, you think of Cal football as being offensive football, and the defense kind of drags along. Right. Well, he's flipped it. They have turned into a tremendous defensive unit because that's his pedigree. That's what he built at Wisconsin and places like that. Just tremendous defensive teams. Well, he's done that at Cal, but he needs to be a complete football coach and show that he can run a program. And they have made minor strides. They are better than they were.
Yeah, minor strides. I also think that there's a window, because we talked about Stanford struggling right now, not being the power. So this is your chance, because that's your rival right there. That's who you look at in the mirror every day, as Stanford. You've got a brief window before David Shaw figures out how to fix this, and you got to grab it.
Like you, I raised an eyebrow at the hire of Herm Edwards. I didn't necessarily say this is going to be a disaster, but I said this is not what I would do, because this is not conventional, and you're really going out there taking a chance. The jury's still out for as much as the reviews are rave reviews at this point. I think it's more about the feel, is that, okay, right. It's working. It's not a disaster. And he's stacked up an NFL coaching staff, so they should be doing well. There was a concern that, is the grind going to be too much on the recruiting trail, and is he too old and lost touch with these young athletes? But it's kind of the opposite. The guy's a fountain of youth in and of himself, and he connects with young people. He's a natural born leader and inspirational source. But on the field, 17-13, 11-11 in the conference, that's pretty much what Arizona State does with anybody on the sideline.
Right. Yeah, look, he leads by example, getting up. He's known to get up and go running, work out at 4 a.m. so that he's already gotten he can tell his players, when they're in the weight room at 6, hey, I already did mine. What are you doing today? Kind of thing. He joked with me one time about playing an early game when they had the 9 a.m. game this year against USC. And he said, that's fine with me. I'm up early. He said, when you get to be my age, after midnight, you got to check the clock every hour to make sure you can still wake up and check the clock. So that was great. But he has that kind of look. And his players call them Hermisms. He's got these pearls of wisdom from his years that, while he is old by coaching standards today, the players are soaking it in, because he's been to the NFL, he's been to the mountaintop. He like you pointed out, he's got coordinators on his staff who've been there. They trust him to get there, to help them get there.
At the same time, once again, anytime somebody calls in to the show or comments on my videos and it's related to Herm Edwards, it's, oh man, Herm's doing great. It's a great hire, man. They're killing it. They're not killing it. They're doing okay. We'll see. The jury is still out. Again, Arizona State football's been 7-5, 8-4 football generally for a long time, if not better. So he's pretty much doing what's been done there. Right. Now, this is where I'm going outside the box on this one. I got Jonathan Smith at number 4. Okay.
Wow.
Here's what I'm looking at here.
All right.
This is a difficult situation that he was exposed to out of the gate. Oregon State, if you even go beyond the wins and the losses, which were horrendous when he took over and had been for a long period of time, going back to Mike Riley, who did a nice job there post Mike Riley disaster. And maybe I'm remembering just hanging on too much to looking at advanced metrics that said he inherited some of the worst rosters, or one of the worst rosters, like in 20 or 25 years in football, in college football. And just in terms of advanced metrics, just horrible production and play on the field beyond the wins and losses, that they were just not competitive by any stretch. He shows up, he gets them to 5-7. So I'm going to discount the 2-5 last year to a certain extent. They were competitive in those games.
Yeah, they were.
They really were competitive in those games. Now it's going to be difficult for him to sustain this growth, because you mentioned the recruiting class that's coming in this year, which is like,
I think I said like 109th or something.
Like Utah State level.
Oh, Utah State's better.
Now he could be a lifer there, regardless of how well he does. He obviously was a great player in the program. And we did have an Oregon State guy on at one point that said, he might be very content to just, drive the stakes and be the guy there.
And I can see that he would be content to go there, because with this kind of record, where else is he going to go? And it sounds glib, but you and I know coaching is a "what have you done for me lately" business. It's not a friendly job to get into. So it's not like he's got a lot of options. The question is, where is Oregon State's reality check? Are they, look, they had Mike Riley, and they had some good numbers in there. What else have they done in the last 20 years? And like you pointed out, not a lot at all. So are you content to have the competitive team that can pull off a mid-level bowl game every few years, and that's good enough? I don't know. They're spending a lot of money right now on a refurbish of Reser Stadium, and it's costing them a lot of money, and there are expectations that come when you spend money. So I don't know how long the Oregon State Smith will be content. I don't know how long Oregon State will be content. Maybe he gets a little bit more of a lifeline because he is one of them from within the program.
If I'm the administration at Oregon State or the athletic director, what I expect is I want to go to a bowl game most of the time. Now that could be 6-6 and go into a bowl game most of the time. And I'll put up with 4-8, 5-7, maybe even 3-9, cycling through on a bad, a tough schedule and a young roster. And okay, we went 4-8 this year. Got it. But let's get back to 7-5, 6-6, and go into bowl games. And then I would like every 5 to 6 years, some kind of a miracle, get a senior laden team, got an easy skip, boom. We're going to contend for the division. That would satisfy me. That's what I would expect there.
Yeah, I mean, look, they had, remember Quiz Rogers when they had him and his brother on the team, and they were exciting, they were fun. Yeah. Again, you only get one of those every handful of years, and if Oregon State's content to live with that, then Smith is a capable coach.
Yeah, some people might be bowled over by knowing that Oregon State once finished, and this is in this century, third in the nation, 11-1, won a Fiesta Bowl, finished 11-1.
Yeah,
they were that close to playing for a national championship.
Yeah,
I've got David Shaw at number 3. Harbaugh built the program. He put him in great position. So Shaw didn't build it. He had you outlined it. He had the huge start. Stanford almost got to a point where they were They were a juggernaut. They were right. What was fascinating about Pac-12 football at that point was you had Oregon and Stanford ruling and representing the conference very well nationally as elite programs, and they did it in such different ways that it made it so fascinating and interesting.
Right.
And they were winning Rose Bowls, and as you said, that Christian McCaffrey 2015 team that was a top 5-ish team, that was it. And then they kind of flatlined to like this 8-4 kind of status for a few years, and now here, even though they did, to your point, this might have been a really good coaching job by him going 4-2. It's kind of tough to judge with that few of games. Who did they play? But they were on the road, and they go 4-2. But that was coming off 4-8. So this 2021 season is going to be an intriguing one to see where Stanford football is headed.
And I want to see where Shaw's heart is, and I want to see where his head is. He was the reluctant guy through all this Pac-12 rigmarole last year. He was in favor of shutting down the season. They had, the conference had put together a group with the doctor from Oregon State and the president of Oregon and the athletic director from Arizona State and Shaw. They were the group that was going to see this COVID thing through for Larry Scott. Shaw was openly the most reluctant to even consider playing during the summer. When it came about, well, we're going to just do conference. Okay, I can, live with that. That's fine. When it came to the shutdown, he was 100% fine with it. When it came to coming back, he was apprehensive. He was like, I don't know how this works. I really don't. When you've got schools in such a wide geographic area with county health directors ruling this school can play, but this school over here can't. And what do you do? You've got these 9 a.m. games, and he's quoting some Yale sleep study, which says it's horrible for athletes to have to get up that early. And he just seemed very reluctant for the whole thing. And it wasn't the David Shaw I was used to interviewing. It wasn't the guy who really was energetic about things. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how he goes into this year. It was a tough year. The team was, like I said, spent most of the year on the road, even for practices. There was a week when they were practicing at a city park in Seattle because that's what they had available to them. Let's see what the 2021 David Shaw looks like, because it's going to matter.
Well, what you're hitting on there is kind of my final point in transitioning from number 3 here to number 2, is that with Shaw, he's such a well-respected man beyond being a head football coach, and well-rounded man that maybe he's just kind of done with this challenge. And whether that means another head coaching job or something different in life, possibly.
I could see him being a college administrator in some capacity, or with the NCAA, or whatever the case may be. I could absolutely see that in his future.
Now, Tony, I came into this process and this project just assuming that this guy was going to be number 1. Like I almost wrote him down 1 and then went through the rest of the list. But as I went through this, I got Mario Cristobal at number 2.
All right.
So the one big season going to the Rose Bowl, winning the Rose Bowl, great.
Mm-hmm.
And the recruiting is exceptional. But the recruiting, I take that into consideration, certainly, but it hasn't produced results yet. It did, but I mean long-lasting results. So I just need to wait and see a little bit on Mario Cristobal. The returns are good, but it's one season. He had a decent season before that. This past season, again, you almost have to dismiss it. It wasn't great. It wasn't horrible. He backed his way into a Pac-12 championship game. Not his fault, not his decision. Right. Played the game, won the game. So they won the Pac-12. They did not look good in the bowl game. Again, I consider it all pretty neutral. Like, this wasn't horrible. This wasn't great. I'll dismiss it. But the one big year. But besides that, I just want more out of Mario Cristobal. Not that he hasn't shown it to this point, but I need more tenure there. Like this guy has.
All right.
Now, when you do this for 17 years at the same place, and it's Utah, he also had to take that jump to the Pac-12 and a much stronger Pac-12. And there was an adjustment there. He had to build the roster. He had to build the depth. He had to go out and get a lot of junior college type guys that turned out to be impact star players for them to compete against a Pac-12 and compete favorably. But it took his Pac-12 start was 9-18 the first 3 years. So it took some time, but now he's finished ranked 4 out of the last 6 years, 46-21, the last 6 seasons. So this guy can coach, and they have an identity.
Yes, they do.
They know who they are. Yes,
and they have his identity.
Yes,
and I mean that as a compliment. They are not flashy. They're not going to put up 700 yards of offense ever. They are tough. They are rugged. They are soft spoken. So is he. And I say this not as a negative, so I don't want people pinging me later on. Come Pac-12 media days, he's one of the most boring interviews that there is, and that's fine. That's just who he is. He doesn't want to do those things. He likes to sit in the film room, and he likes to coach, and he likes to be with his players, and he'll answer the questions. It's just vanilla pudding answers, whatever. But that's who. But the team represents who he is in the sense of they're serious. They take it seriously. They don't go out there with any flash, any glitz. You're not going to get the turnover chain in Salt Lake City, or the what was it? SMU had the bottle service where you pop the bottle and the confetti comes out. You're not going to get that at Salt Lake City. I don't think you can get bottle service of any kind in Salt Lake City, frankly, but that's just who he is. And he has built the team in his likeness, and it absolutely works.
There it is. So you get Pac-12 rankings from two of us, Tony Syracuse from Last Word on College Football, who covers the Pac-12 just about every day, versus me, who just kind of dabbles all over the place. But
you do it well, though. You do it well.
Tony, we appreciate you stopping by for quite a lengthy stay. So I hope
always glad to do it, Mark.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And again, I called upon Tony to give us his list because I very much respect what he has to say about college football in general and certainly the Pac-12.
Thanks, Tony. I'm always here for you.
Appreciate you.
All right,
see you soon.
All right.
All right, Tony Syracuse from Last Word on College Football. My name is not Kyle Whittingham, and my record is not 134-66. Appreciate everyone diving in the live chat. I believe I got all to the various super chats. Yes, I did. I'm going to go to the end of the line here and see what you guys have for me, and make sure that there are no phone calls because our system kind of went to sleep as I was on the line with Tony. Just want to make sure nobody's calling in right now, but I will take calls and post the number here at 860-499-3332. There we are down at the bottom on the ticker, 860-499-3332. As soon as our monitor cooperates, I'll be able to take some calls. There we go. We've got Dominic on the line. Dominic's been waiting for quite some time probably here. So, Dominic, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, Mark. How are you doing?
I am doing just fine. Appreciate you waiting on us here. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to give my coach Pac-12 ranking.
All right. Awesome. What you got?
So at number 12, I have Carl Dorrell.
Okay.
Number 11, Jed Fish.
Okay.
Number 10, Chip Kelly.
All right.
Number 9, Mike Rolovich.
Okay. Nick Rolovich. All right. Very good.
Number 8, Jimmy Lake.
Okay.
Number 7, Clay Helton.
Okay.
Number 6, Jonathan Smith.
All right.
Number 5, Justin Wilcox. At number 4, Herm Edwards. Number 3, David Shaw. Number 2, Mario Cristobal.
Okay.
And last but not least, at number 1, we have Kyle Winningham.
Dominic, thank you so much for the list. That seems like a very credible list. Thanks for sharing tonight.
No problem. You have a good night.
Have a good night, Dominic. Dominic, with the Pac-12 coaches list we did not ask for, but that's great. Anybody who would like to call in, of course, we're wide open for any college football discussion, so you guys can do whatever you want. And now we've got Emmanuel on the line, would like to talk about Chip Kelly's offense. Emmanuel, you're up.
Yes, sir. Hi there, first-time caller. I actually started listening to you when our guy from the Arkansas Razorbacks interviewed you, and I thought it was a fantastic interview that you guys did together.
Oh, that's very nice of you. Thank you.
I've been a fan since. I really enjoy your show. My question is, when I heard that UCLA hired Chip Kelly for the job, I was so excited. I thought UCLA, because the Pac-12 is known as maybe the worst conference in football. It has for a long time, not since the USC days of 2005 and 6. And when I heard that Chip Kelly was coming to UCLA, I thought he was going to bring back that exciting Oregon offense. And I've been so disappointed to see what he's brought. I was expecting to see, like the Black Mamba from back in Oregon, be at UCLA. That type of player, that type of offense, that quick offense where they just suffocated defenses. And I don't know what I'm watching, just very bland and boring football. What's your take? Why is this happening? Why can't he do what he did at Oregon, at UCLA? He can recruit even better athletes in Southern California just in his backyard.
Well, as I mentioned to Tony, if you look at the recruiting rankings, it's eerily very close. I did a breakdown on a video to basically size up the recruiting rankings of the roster that comprised the best Oregon teams versus the UCLA roster that Chip Kelly inherited from Jim Mora, and they were almost identical. They were roughly 15th rated recruiting classes for those rosters. So not necessarily was that talent in the same positions, of course, on the field, but overall, he inherited a roster at UCLA that was similar to the talent that he won 33 out of 36 games in the Pac-12 at Oregon and competed for national championships. So where's the disconnect in the problem? Well, I think it's a few things. I think number one, that Jim Mora built pro-style offenses. Of course, his last quarterback there was Josh Rosen, and so he had pro-style offense personnel, and Chip Kelly then wanted to run his system. And very oddly, Chip Kelly's first selection at quarterback was Wilton Spate, who was a very immobile quarterback, for a college quarterback that came in from Michigan. He was a Michigan transfer who ran an offense with fullbacks and tight ends. And that was Chip Kelly's first selection of a quarterback at UCLA. So understand that Chip Kelly's only been there for 2 full seasons and then this one short 7-game season. So he hasn't been able to turn over the roster completely. I'm not making excuses for him, but he just hasn't. And I also think it's something that we've talked about a number of times, Emmanuel, that college football is caught up with Chip Kelly. So what Chip Kelly was doing in 2010, nobody was doing, or hardly anybody was doing. So he was utilizing very small, quick, lightning fast offensive linemen. So what they were doing with their offensive lines in 2010 was very different from everybody else. And the tempo that they were using caught people off guard because people didn't see that on a regular basis. And just his style of offense was just coming into vogue in the way that he was using it. Well, by the time he gets to UCLA, it's 2017 and it's 2018. And so by the time, 6 to 7 years rolled around, it's now not a big deal. Everybody's doing it. So I think that's part of it.
Gotcha,
a large part of it.
I agree, but it seems like when he went to the NFL, right when he left Oregon, I was expecting the Philadelphia Eagles to run some of that offense, and he seemed to change all of a sudden. He abandoned what made him great, and he goes on to the 49ers and the same thing, and he returned to college, which I thought he would return to the style, even though I think someone that comes to mind is old Gus Malzahn over at Auburn, who everyone says they've caught up to his style, but, about every 3 years he beats Alabama,
Yep. I would agree that, to watch UCLA football, there's nothing distinct about it. There's nothing distinct about the style of offense. And he's just kind of become a football coach, just another guy, just another football coach. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you see him staying at UCLA very long, or do you think he's at the hot seat right now?
Oh, I would think that if he turns in, let's say, a 5-win season this year, I would think that he's gone.
Yeah. And one last thing, because I don't want to use up all the time. I really appreciate your time.
Sure.
I find that one of the biggest problems the Pac-12 has is that we always seem to hire terrible coaches compared to the SEC or other conferences. The example is the Arizona hire, which I thought, Gus Malzahn was available. I thought they could have tried someone that, had, a coach that had some buzz, and they bring, I don't even know the guy's name. I knew he was a coach with the Patriots, and I guess grew up in Arizona and played for them. Pac-12 needs better coaches, in my opinion. All right. Hey, I've taken too much of your time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Emmanuel. The better coaches will not come until the money comes. So Pac-12 does not pay as much money as the other conferences. Therefore, the coaching is not going to be as good. All right. I am trying to follow this voice recognition on the next call. I'm not going to try to make that out. I believe this call is coming in about the ACC Commissioner. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Hello? Okay, we'll keep going with that and move on to the next call. This one's coming in from a Wolverine fan talking Melt, the newest of the new rounders that are. So again, we cannot go with a voice recognition. We know that this is probably a Wolverine fan. Welcome to the voice of college football.
Hey, Mark.
There he is.
I was meant to say, yep. I was meant to say that, before I was on show, I was meant to say, the top two emerging rivalries are, that's what I meant, in college football.
Okay.
But, go ahead.
Your top two emerging rivalries in college football.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask you. If you have some in mind.
Emerging rivalries.
Yeah.
So do you have any? Is that why you're calling? Because you're going to give us yours, or you wanted to hear mine?
Well, me both. Yeah, I'll do mine. You can do yours. Yeah.
Okay. Well, give me a second to scan the country. So let's have it.
All right. I think. Well, no more. It's obvious. Ohio State and Clemson. 2 bowl game rivals. Well, I don't know about bowl game, but rivals that are emerging faster and faster. I think that's going to be a really good rivalry if Clemson and Ohio State plays a home and home series. But yeah. Second, Wisconsin and Nebraska. I know this has been the rivalry brewing since I forgot what year, but it's been emerging for quite some time, and Nebraska fans don't like don't like Wisconsin that much, but not as much as Iowa, but they don't like Wisconsin. So, that's my second one. My third one is, you might be surprised about this one, but Michigan State and Ohio State. Even though they played, I don't know how many times, but I remember that kick. I remember that field goal. I believe it's 2014, right, or 2015 when Michigan State won by a field goal. Either one of those two. But yeah, those are free. What's yours?
All right. Based on Matt Campbell's work at Iowa State, and they took Oklahoma down to the wire in the Big 12 championship game. They've knocked off Oklahoma twice in the regular season recently. Still, Oklahoma has been able to maintain control of the Big 12 and won the conference 6 consecutive years. I like Oklahoma, and if Matt Campbell stays at Iowa State, that is a emerging rivalry on the national scene, but also for domination there in the Big 12. I'll go with that one.
Yep.
Jimbo Fisher is being paid to win national championships at Texas A&M. He's a national championship winning coach, being paid $75 million. He has an enormous fan base and stadium of 105,000 people, a rabid fan base with all the facilities and money and resources he would ever want to get out on the recruiting trail and bring in the best players. He's in the state of Texas where football is king, and he is going up against the king of college football in the same division, Nick Saban. Is Texas A&M ready to take on Alabama? Could that be a burgeoning rivalry in the SEC, Alabama and Texas A&M? Those are the two that come to mind.
Okay, I was just questioning because I love rivalry, so as much as people do, but I like to watch them, and some are blowouts, but some are really good games, close games. But yeah, how about the Big Ten? What's a new emerging rivalry in your mind in the Big Ten?
In the Big Ten.
Yeah.
In the Big Ten, well, pretty much everybody in the Big Ten Western Division are already rivals. You know, when you look at Wisconsin, Minnesota, that's a rivalry. Iowa, Minnesota is a rivalry. Wisconsin, Iowa is a rivalry. They're all kind of already rivals.
Like, how about the one I said with Nebraska and Wisconsin? Is that an emerging rivalry?
Sure, it could be, but Nebraska has to challenge Wisconsin. Basically, Nebraska showed up in 2011, and Wisconsin's pretty much beating them like a drum, starting with a championship game the next year in the Big Ten with 70 points on the board. And so, yeah, I could see that being a rivalry because Nebraska should win at Wisconsin's level. They should, but they're not.
Yeah, they should, but
You know,
they won't.
I think one sleeper team in the Big Ten is Maryland. Maryland has brought in really good recruiting classes. They have access to Virginia and Pennsylvania and Maryland and the DC area, which actually produces more NFL players per capita than any state. And so they just brought in another top like 17 or 18 class in the country. So maybe Maryland's got a chance to supplant the likes of Michigan and Penn State and those teams in the East Division. But in terms of them having a rivalry with anyone, I know that the Big Ten would like Maryland and Rutgers. You know, they matched them up the last game of the season for the first several seasons they were in the Big Ten. But, you know, you got to be good for anyone to care about that rivalry. But a rivalry in the Big Ten. Yeah. Again, the Big Ten is flooded with rivalries. Maybe Ohio State and Indiana, if Tom Allen can keep it up.
That's not bad at all, actually. But well, actually, I would like to know. I think if Chad remembers, I think Michigan and Northwestern established a rivalry, but it's with a trophy, I think. But I don't know if it's a rivalry yet. But I think they made a rivalry trophy. That's true. But
our friend Fire Justin Fuente just served up North Carolina and Miami, and I think that's a good call on his part.
Yeah. I agree with that, and I think in Pac-12, I know there's, I don't know, maybe Arizona State and USC, maybe.
Yeah, I like that. USC is, of course, the mainstay in that division, and Arizona State with Herm Edwards has a lot of juice, a lot of vibe, recruiting prowess. I really like Arizona State as a sleeper team this year.
Yeah, and plus they had that pretty good quarterback, but I don't know. I haven't seen really much of him, but he looked good in his freshman year. I think. I think his name is
Jaden
probably after his name. Yeah, not Jaden Daniels. What was it again?
Jaden Daniels.
Okay. Yeah, I got a little confused with JT or Jaden, but Jaden Daniels is a sleeper for, I don't know for Heisman yet, but he might be a sleeper for maybe for Heisman. I don't know, but I was just wanting to talk about that, and that's it.
Well, Nate, we always appreciate hearing from you. Have a great night as well.
Yep.
All right, a couple more calls in queue here. We got to Victory Sports for Jonathan Smith, and we will see what this might be the first ever call to the Voice of College Football on behalf of the Oregon State Beavers here. If I can get this thing to click. There we go. Mark Rogers TV, the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's McD Sports Boy. How you doing?
Oh, McD, what's going on?
I'm doing good. I need you to continue preaching about what you said about Maryland in that last call. Just saying. I liked everything I heard about that.
Okay. Yeah, I was touting your Terps as a possible team emerging in the Big Ten as a power.
I mean, I agree with everything you said in that statement, but the reason I'm calling is the laughable ranking of Jonathan Smith at number 4.
Okay, you don't like my ranking.
Listen, I don't think Jonathan Smith is a bad coach. I don't think he's the worst coach in the Pac-12. I think he should be inside a top 10, somewhere around 8. But there is no way that you can tell me that you are throwing Chip Kelly, Clay Hilton, and Junior Lake behind him. There's no way.
Okay. Let's understand that this doesn't mean that these coaches are going to achieve and succeed in this order. Jonathan Smith doesn't have anywhere close to the facilities, the resources, or more so than all of that, the recruiting footprint than Chip Kelly and Clay Helton. So he cannot be held to the same standard. That's not what I'm rating. I'm not predicting who's going to win the most games. If I was going to do that, my list would look a lot different.
Mm. I mean, in my opinion, Oregon State, I know they're not like world beaters, and I know Jonathan Smith went ahead and beat Oregon, which is great for that program. But I see Chip Kelly doing better at UCLA this year. Clay Helton's consistently making bowl games outside of one season recently. And I honestly think Junior Lake might be the next great thing. Like, my surprise team this year is Washington in the whole country.
Well, again, those two guys are doing that at USC and UCLA, where they have 5- and 4-star players on every corner. Jonathan Smith.
That is true.
Again, this is not a prediction about who's going to win the most games. This is my judgment about the job that's been done to date. And I'm also trying to weigh the past versus the present. And I'm giving a lot more weight to what's going on right this second versus Chip Kelly going to national championship games 11 years ago.
I mean, you're right. It was 11 years ago. It felt like a time ago. But Jonathan Smith granted, he went 5-7 and 2-5. I mean, I'm not really going to count last year. The 5-7 year was a massive improvement, but I honestly don't think. At the end of the day, I'm just taking Chip Kelly, Clay Helton, and Junior Lake all over Jonathan Smith.
Listen to this season last year, McD. Listen to this season. They come out of and I watched some of these games. First game of the season, they played Washington State pretty much to the wire. They were down by 3 points late in the game. They lose 38-28 to Washington State. Okay. It's not, I'm talking
2019, right?
I'm talking 2020, this past season.
2020
season. So first game against Washington State comes down to the last couple of minutes. They lose the game. And I'm not saying that that's a great effort like Washington State's a great team. I'm just saying they played a very competitive, close game against a division foe that's been good. Then they go to Washington. They lose 27-21. They play the Huskies, who may have turned out to be the best team in the conference. We just didn't get to see them enough. They lost 27-21. Then they go to Cal, and they win that game 31-27. They beat Cal. They beat Oregon 41-38, who's supposed to be the most talented team, definitely in the division. Okay, then their last 3 games of the season are losses, but they go to Utah, and they play with Utah 30-24. They lose to Stanford 27-24, and then they lose to Arizona State to finish the season by 13. The Oregon State was not doing anything close to this when he arrived. They were awful. I don't know if you heard my discussion with Tony. I remember reading an article that outlined their roster quality when he took over the program, that it was rating it among the worst rosters in like the last 40 years of college football, and the advanced metrics were just horrendous. They were so bad on both sides of the ball. So anyway, I just think he's done a nice job making them. He's done a really good job making them competitive. They're not winning these games, but they're playing within one score of pretty much everybody.
And that's great. I mean,
and they beat Oregon.
I don't think they're going to be beating Oregon on a consistent basis. You never know. Washington State did beat Oregon 4 straight years, but to me, I'll probably just place him around 8. I agree with Kyle Waringham at first. I think a lot of people would put Mario Cristobal over Waringham, but I'm just going to take the stability over someone who just got there a few years ago. But I think if we look back at this in a few years from now, I think I will actually turn out to be more right. I think what you're trying to do is try and make a Dan Mullen argument at Mississippi State with Jonathan Smith. But I kind of just view Jonathan Smith as a weaker version of Dan Mullen. Because no one's going to be knocking on his door trying to give him the USC job or the Oregon job anytime soon.
I also might be making the Pat Fitzgerald argument. So we'll see when I get to my Big Ten rankings that are coming out next.
I'm very interested to see that.
I'm typically very not too kind to Mike Loxley.
You were very kind about him in your last call, though.
What's that?
He can recruit.
Yes.
You were kind about him. He can definitely recruit. Yeah, that's the one thing you can't deny about him. He can recruit.
He can recruit.
Still a question mark coaching wise. I mean, hopefully the expectation is to make a bowl game, and if we don't, you might, depending on how the season goes, you might be seeing me call for his job or something.
So they got West Virginia out of conference this year, and no other tough non-conference.
I think
games,
we're beating
right?
them. We got them, Bowling Green, and I think nobody.
So they could go 3-0 out of conference.
I don't think Indiana's going to be as good as they were last year. I think they're going to take a step back.
Yeah.
They lose a lot of talent, but we'll see. I think second place is definitely a possibility, even though I'm probably not going to predict it because I think Penn State and Michigan are better talent-wise, but we'll see. I can't wait.
I'm not the type, McD, that says just based on a record that I can make an evaluation. So if they go 7-5, I'm going to tell you that was a great coaching job. But that obviously, that's where you start, the record. That's what it means, and that's what we're looking at. I'm generally going to say right here that if Maryland goes 7-5, that's my expectation for Mike Loxley, that I would like to see him go 7-5, and I will think that that's a capable job and a strong step in the right direction for this program.
I hope you're right. I mean, I'm tired of staying out bowl season now. It has been 4 or 5 years. So
yeah,
you're here for me after your Big Ten coaching rankings for
sure. They're coming out. They're coming out next. I just have to cut the video. I've got the rankings all set. All right, McD.
Sounds great. Thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely. See you soon. And we got a call coming in on the ACC Commissioner and Talk is Pitt. I apologize that you called, and hopefully this is you right here. Hey, it's the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hello.
Hey, is this Talk is Pitt? All right. Sorry about that last time. I didn't realize.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, the call never beeped over, and I'm like, okay, I'll just call back or wait till your next call-in show.
Great. Thank you, sir. What's on your mind?
But so this new ACC commissioner is already working his magic to try to get everybody in the ACC, doesn't matter if it's bad or good, a better TV deal. Because a lot of us have to subscribe to the ACC Network to watch the games or find some other way of watching it. So he's trying to get us a better TV deal. But for Pitt, he's trying to extend the rivalry past with West Virginia, because we play them next season, past 2026, because it ends in after the 2025 season. I'm thinking, honestly, there's probably going to be some type of ACC conference realignment. Somebody's going to leave and somebody's going to come in. And I'm hoping that's West Virginia. I don't think we'll do well in the Big Ten. I know everybody in the chat thinks Pitt would have, I don't know, I guess a natural rivalry with Maryland and Penn State. But I just don't think it would go well if we move to the Big Ten. I think we're okay where we're at.
Yeah, I understand that. But I do think that geographically, you're more suited to the Big Ten, especially now that Rutgers and Maryland are in play to the east, where at prior to
Mhm.
Rutgers and Maryland, you would have been on the outskirts of the Big Ten territory, but now you'd be firmly inside the geography of the Big Ten. And as you well know, I don't know how long you've been watching college football, but Penn State and Pitt was one of the great rivalries at the end of the season every year. That was a great rivalry. And
Oh yeah, definitely.
so, and you know, back in those days, of course, they were all independents, and Maryland was a common opponent for Pitt as well, as you well know. And I think it would be a great fit for Pitt to be in the Big Ten. I don't think it's one of those that's crazy that they're in the ACC. I think it's crazy that West Virginia's in the Big 12. There's not a school within
exactly.
1,200 miles of West Virginia. It's just a completely southern Midwest conference. It's Kansas. It's the Dust Bowl. It's Kansas and Iowa, and it should be Missouri and Texas and Oklahoma. That's the conference, not West Virginia. So
what is it, like $1 million? It costs the West Virginia at least $1 million to transport all those players down for away games, at least.
Yeah, and they got to do that. We just think football, but they've got to do that in every sport.
Yeah,
you know, they're doing that in women's basketball, honestly, and baseball and everything.
Oh yeah, it's what I didn't understand is why didn't West Virginia come with us to the ACC, or why didn't the conference get realigned better? Because as much as I don't think Pitt being in the ACC is like, you know, making them travel out of their way, because they really don't have to travel that far. Clemson's really not that far away from the city. I want to say probably about a 12-hour drive, maybe 2-hour plane ride. So geographically, it's not, you know, too horrible. I just don't really, besides the old rivalries getting renewed, me as a Pitt fan, I really don't see it going well. I honestly think we'd get beat up on. I mean, we get beat up on every year. Well, except this coming season, it's a little bit different. I say 9-3. Nobody agrees with me, but 9-3.
Well, I understand what you're saying. You would be playing, the Big Ten is just a better conference than the ACC, and you'd play in the better division against Ohio State every year, Michigan and Penn State, and Michigan State's not what they were under D'Antonio, but yeah, it'd be a tougher draw. There's no question. Instead of playing Duke and Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech and Virginia every year and the rest of the Coastal, no question.
Oh yeah, I like Virginia Tech though. I like the rivalry that is kind of starting to get a little bit more intense. I mean, because a couple of fights broke out during the Virginia Tech game. And sorry to any Hokie fans that are in the chat right now, because I'm watching it on my laptop. We beat you guys up last year. Get over it.
So again, you would like Pitt to stay in the ACC, and you want West Virginia in the conference, and then whoever leaves. But you want West Virginia there.
Yeah, whoever leaves.
Yeah.
It's just, if Pitt would get realigned anywhere, they have to go wherever West Virginia is going.
Sure.
That was Pitt's, even bigger than the Penn State rivalry. That was their biggest revenue booster right there. Look what the Backyard Brawl did in 2007.
Yep.
When if West Virginia would have won, they would have went to the national championship and probably won it.
I don't know about that, but yeah, who knows? But
I didn't follow college football back then. I was only at the game because I worked at I was working down in Morgantown.
Yeah, we would have had an Ohio State, West Virginia national championship game in 2007. But anyway, I realigned the conferences a few years ago, and I would have tore up the ACC, and I would have taken that Eastern block out of the ACC, because that to me is not what the ACC is. I would have taken out Boston College, Syracuse, Pitt, Louisville, and built a Big East football conference with Pitt, West Virginia, Penn State, Syracuse, Rutgers, Maryland. Did I say BC? I built a 12-team Big East conference, and I would have ushered UCF into the ACC and kept that as I built 12-team conferences, 6 of them. And I would have gone that route.
That would actually make a lot of sense. Because I've even said before, Pitt had better, I want to say, success in the Big East than what they're doing now. With the rivalries with West Virginia, Cincinnati, Rutgers. When Rutgers was in the Big East, we always played them. And I'd like us to start playing Maryland again, to be honest. I mean, Pitt fans want to play Maryland. If that's the one requested team we wanted to play was Maryland besides West Virginia, but we don't count that because we got them next year. Thank God. They're going to lose.
All right. Good stuff. Anything else, sir?
What is, do you think the new ACC commissioner is going to do better than the last one? And that's the last one.
Well, I like what I read in that article today. At least he's thinking forwardly. He's thinking, okay, what I need to survey the people that count in this conference, the coaches, the ADs, the administrators, and say what's wrong. And he's thinking TV, and he's thinking geography, and like you just stated, he's thinking rivalries, and he's thinking what brings in money, football. Well, we got to figure out a way to maintain our basketball status as the leader in basketball, but not have that tagged on us as we're a basketball conference, because that hurts our football. And so it seems like he's going about it the right way. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I like, and that's basically all I had for you tonight, Mark.
Cool.
I'll see you on the next show. I'll hop back up into the chat.
Awesome. Have a good night.
You too, sir. Thank you.
All right. Next call coming in. This concerning Clay Helton. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Rod. Mark, how you doing?
Hey, Rod. Doing well.
Good. So just wanted to add a little bit to the Clay Helton discussion you and Tony were having a little bit ago, or I guess a while ago now. So I have an aunt that's a USC grad, and I talk about Clay Helton with her all the time. She's a fairly decent donor. She's not a big donor by any means, but she knows a lot of the big donors. You know, she has her own litigation firm. They're in LA, so she knows a lot of the big donors. She knows a couple of the famous ones. And there's a lot of mixed feelings about him there. So I kind of wanted to break down, what's really, I think he's doing a good job. I think, he could be doing better. But considering, the sanctions, it's taken them a while to get over those sanctions they had at the end of the Pete Carroll years. And then obviously, that mess during the Lane Kiffin time. But it seems like the vibe that she gets from, she knows some admin, some BOT, alumni and stuff like that. And the people who don't like him, they're really incredibly petty reasons. They kind of discriminate against him, kind of like they did with Ed Ordrum for the whole, he's a Southern guy, and the elitists there in LA, just don't really, that kind of, his vibe doesn't really sit well with them, but that's just their pretentious elitist attitude. But then they also recognize, however, that the players just love him, because he was there. He took over for Lane Kiffin when he got fired. I think he just coached one game, but he won. And then the staff retained him, or the Sarkisian staff retained him. And then, he's a really popular coach. And I think the USC staff has this real, or not staff, but the admins and the BOTs are just waiting for him to really just fall on his face. Because the name that keeps popping up that they would really want out there is Chris Peterson. They really believe that they can lure him away from Washington in whatever role he's in currently. But they also realize, he does, at least from what they feel, and take this for what it's worth, but they kind of think he's also got NFL aspirations. So I was just kind of looking what he's done there. His first full year there in 26 years, he won 10 games, won the Rose Bowl, finished third in the country. The next year, they had another really good year. They had won 11 games, but lost to Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Then the year after that, only 5 wins. They went 5-7. But then after that, he recovered, won 8 wins. Got 8 wins. And then last year, he went 5-1. He's won some division titles. So they can't really get rid of him with a resume like that. You know what I mean? Because that's not really bad, but at the same time, they still feel like they can do bigger and better. So what do you think? Do you think he's done good enough to keep his job? Or do you think, you know, he's always going to kind of be on that short leash, you know, kind of hot? I don't really want to call it a hot seat, but do you think he's still going to be on that short leash?
I think he's done the 7th best job in the Pac-12 based on my ratings. That I think that he's a decent coach. Like you, I think he's done better, as I explained a few minutes ago, he's done better than what USC fans, 90% of them, believe that he's done. You outlined it well, slightly different than I did, of what he's accomplished, which is reasonable. It's a solid resume. It's not outstanding. They've had 3 legendary coaches in the last 40 to 50 years, and John McKay, John Robinson, and Pete Carroll, and his performances doesn't come anywhere close to them. It's more in line with some of the guys in between that come to mind. And yeah, they should do better than that. They should do better than that. They should be winning. I would say at USC, you should be winning, going roughly 10-2 just about every year, peaking, you know, with 11 or 12 wins, taking shots at national titles every few years. And then your down years are 8-4. And that's what it should be. He's more, well, he's kind of all over the place is what he's been. As you mentioned, those 2 really strong years, and the better year was the year they did not win the Pac-12 championship. But as I explained, they were one of the best teams in the country by season's end. Once they decided Darnold was the guy, he made the wrong quarterbacking decision coming out of the gate, unfortunately, that season. And I think it was Max Brown was the starter that he selected. Was it? Anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
I believe it was Max Brown. Yeah. And so I think he's a capable football coach, but USC is supposed to have a top 5 to 10 coach, and I don't think he's that guy. But like you say, they're waiting for him to fall flat on his face. They did somewhat one year at 5-7 2 years ago, but that was losing JT Daniels in the first game, and there was some excuse there. There was some disclaimer there. So if he would have followed up that season with another clunker, then he would have been gone. But he didn't. But he didn't rebound off of it to another Rose Bowl type season. They went 8-5 the next year. And then this past season, you know, this past season was another kind of incomplete, and if you're going to grade it, kind of another C+ performance, because they were 5-1, but they were not dominant in these games. You know, they were slipping by Arizona with last-second touchdowns.
Yeah.
And then they lost a Pac-12 championship game where they were really outclassed against a team that didn't show much otherwise in Oregon. So if anything, it was a slightly disappointing season, even though it was 5-1.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's winning 8.5 games a year. I mean, after 4 full seasons in the 6-game season last season, which, you know, at USC, you know, that's not great, but I don't really think that's fireable either. Well, and then, you know, and the point that you've made in the past as well, too, you know, California, the recruiting there is kind of slowly decreasing each season. You know, I didn't really think about that. You know, like Georgia's really shot up, and California's starting to decline. You know, and he's losing a lot of these kids to Oregon. A lot of California kids are still coming back here to the Midwest. You know, Ohio State's getting California kids. You know, even Alabama and Clemson are getting California kids now.
But is that his fault?
Another struggle.
Is that partially his fault, though? Think of it this way. You're an Ohio State fan. If Ohio State was winning 8.5 games a year, would you be pleased with that? Isn't USC on the same level as isn't USC on the same level as Ohio State? They're not currently, but aren't they supposed to be? And he's the guy in charge to get that done. And if Ohio, as you well know, if Ohio State stays at home in Ohio, they're going 6-6 every year, 7-5.
Right. But
if Clay Helton can stay at home, he can win the Pac-12, and he's not even doing that.
True, but in USC's defense, or in his defense, Ohio State's not a disaster internally. They've had 2 athletic director changes.
True.
Maybe even 3 in his.
Yeah.
And then they've had that mess. They've had, USC had that big, that scandal with the celebrities and all that. So USC as a whole has had a lot of PR
True.
issues in the last decade.
Yeah.
So that's another reason. And plus, a lot of people are leaving the state. So, that's a struggle. And then also factor in this, he's now competing with 2 NFL teams in the city. During Pete Carroll's time in Syracuse, they were the team of LA. Now he's got to compete with 2 NFL teams in the city. You know what I mean? So, the attention, granted, there's a lot of fair weather fans there in LA, a lot of Midwest transplants, East Coast transplants and all that. But he's competing now with 2 NFL teams. He's got to compete with now LeBron James being out there with the Lakers. The Dodgers are now the best team in baseball. He has Mike Trout, even though he's unrecognizable still to a degree in LA because he plays for the Low Angels. But now he's got a lot. I just feel like he's got a lot more to deal with than, say, Pete Carroll. Now, I'm not saying he's good as Pete Carroll, not saying because Pete Carroll cleaned up an absolute mess when he took over that job. However, but he also was able to recruit. He had a great pitch. Come to LA. We are the team of LA. But now he has to compete with the Rams and the Chargers who are in this brand new state-of-the-art facility. And meanwhile, he's stuck at the Coliseum. Granted, they're going through renovations, but that place is awful. I've been to many games there. It is not a very good place to watch a game. It's not in a very good part of town. So, no, you are absolutely right. He still needs to do a better job getting those California kids to stay home. However, a lot of it is not completely his fault, considering the overall mess the university is as a whole. And that's a big reason why Urban Meyer didn't go there, because he knew they had a lot of internal issues. Their training facilities are incredibly outdated. So I think they just need to try to stick with him until, he just blatantly falls flat on his face. And I don't know. The schedule looks pretty favorable here in the future.
Well, they don't have to
do that. And the recruiting is floating in.
Auburn just fired Gus Malzahn. Ohio State fired John Cooper after he went 8-4. They don't have to do that. They don't have to say, well, as long as he keeps going 8-5, 9-4, we're going to keep him. They may. That's what they've been doing to a certain extent, but they don't have to. They're USC. They can say, okay, enough's enough. We need to win championships, and this guy's not getting it done. 2016 was 6 years ago. They could be saying this in a couple of years. That was 6 years ago. He's done nothing but pretty much go 8-5 since then. So they don't have to.
Right, well,
he doesn't have to be
question.
A train wreck or a disaster for them to fire him. Places like Auburn are firing Gus Malzahn for going 8-4, 9-3.
True, but let me ask you a question about John Cooper then. If he doesn't go 2-10-1, say he goes 6-6-1, how much longer does he stay at Ohio State against Michigan?
Well, he does. Yeah. He survives. Or if one of those teams push through to win a national title, yeah, they're probably not firing him 3 years later for going 8-4. Sure. It's
right.
Not just all about the bottom line record. It has to be put into context. All right, sir.
Well, I think this one thing. Okay, there's one last point though. Again, The players just love him, but I think Chris Peterson would be an outstanding hire for them, and I just want USC to be good. It's like I want Miami to be good. So, all right, I know you got other people going. So, thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate it. All right, we are about getting near the end of my tank of gas, but we got one other call on the line. We've been on the air for 2.5 hours and had 2 other shows, so I think we've got about 5 hours of live coverage today here. It's the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Well, I'm glad I might be your last caller of the evening, voice of college football, Mark Rogers.
Yes, sir.
So I'm happy to take it. I'm happy you're hanging in there. In any case, by the way, a couple things on the John Cooper thing. John Cooper lost his job largely because he lost that team the last 2 years. Remember, they had some players that were getting in trouble, and they had some off the field issues that I think were starting to cost them. Plus, I think, Andy Geiger in the new regime there was not as lenient with him as, the old crew was previously. I think that had a lot to do with his demise the last 2 years there, because I think the train was starting to kind of come off the track. You remember a little bit of that?
Sure, I do. Yep.
Okay. I mean, so I think there were some other things at play there. I just want to stipulate that as far as that goes, to kind of add to what you and Rod were just talking about. I did want to. Oh, by the way, Mark, did you say that? What did you say Ohio State's record would be if they recruited Ohio players in the Big Ten? They do better than 7-5, Mark, in the Big Ten. I still think, because it's the Big Ten. I still think they do better than 7-5.
If all they did was recruit Ohio players, that's it.
Well, the 2014 team had 15 starters from the state of Ohio. So
I know, but the quality continues to, if I could get my computer to work here, I would look up. I've looked at the commits in Ohio, and it's getting down to 6 or 7 4-stars. I think it was 9.
Well, there was 9 or 10 the last time I checked. Ohio State should still be able to get 7 or 8 of those to come to Ohio State.
Well, I understand.
My argument is that they're going to
go ahead.
My argument is that they're still going to take in a 24-man recruiting class. They're still going to take 5 or 6 3-stars. My argument is you should take 5 or 6 3-stars from the state of Ohio, because a lot of those guys could be Darren Lee or Pat Elfline or folks like that can be key contributors to a national title team, because the 3-stars from the state of Ohio, it means a little bit more to them to go to Ohio State. And maybe they stay to their senior year and they develop into a good player. Any truth to that?
Sure. You're pretty much spouting the doctrine of Jim Tressel.
Well, right. And Jim Tressel didn't do all that bad. I mean, he still won as many national titles as Urban Meyer did, and, played for 2 others.
Yeah, I'm not debating that. I've always been a defender of Jim Tressel's record.
I mean, I would still say that Urban Meyer had a better record. And I do think that Tressel took advantage of a weaker Big Ten his last 4 years, although Meyer took advantage of a weak Big Ten probably his first 3 or 4 years as a head coach. The Big Ten did get stronger in 15, 16, and 17, probably even 18, than it was in 2012 and 2013 for sure. So, I mean, the Big Ten was very strong when Tressel first got there in like 01, 02, 03, 04. And then, as we talked about in the past, it really, after that national title loss to Florida, the Big Ten really started to go downhill there for a few years. For about 4 or 5 years there?
Yeah, it did. Not as much as I believe the national narrative played out, but that's how that works every time. It's always going to get overplayed.
I did want to make one point about the coaches that you made. You had Whittingham 1 and then Cristobal 2?
Yes.
Okay. I would say this. I was going to ask you, I think Whittingham, I actually think the Utah job, if you had to rank the Utah job, how high would you rank it, Mark?
That's curious, because I'm in the process of trying to rank these programs 1 through 130. I think a Utah job's a top 30 job.
Okay. Because what I was going to illustrate is because obviously Urban had success there, his 04 team with Alex Smith went undefeated. And then who was the coach in 08 when they had the really good year and then upset Alabama in the Sugar Bowl?
Well, that was the year that, 17 years ago, Whittingham was. He took over.
Okay, I'm sorry.
He took over.
I didn't know
He coached the Fiesta Bowl for Urban Meyer in the 04 season, January of 2005. That was his introductory into the program. Yeah, he's in his 17th season there.
Wow, I didn't realize he's been there that long. Okay. I can understand your because I didn't know. I thought that they had a different coach when they had beaten Alabama that year in 08. I didn't realize he'd been there that long.
Yep, this is
so
all
he's
him.
Really, yeah. Well, I was. Let me ask you this question about Cristobal though, because you had him at 2. First of all, he seems to be a very wanted guy because Miami was after him, right?
Yeah.
My question to you is, and Oregon's obviously had some success. Obviously, you can go all the way back to Mike Bellotti, in the early 2000s, had some good teams. My question to you would be, the Kelly run of 09, I mean, because Mark Helfrich pretty much took over his program and kind of won with a fair amount of his guys. So their run really went from 2009 to let's say 2014 there, and then they started to kind of go down the hill a little bit. What, just in your overall opinion, is Cristobal's chances of, I want to say, duplicating that or getting close to that?
Getting close to it, I think they're pretty high. I think he's on his way. I think he's already shown us in one season. We don't know what would have happened last year. Again, like I was saying to either to Tony or to somebody just in the last half hour, that I think that their season last year was an incomplete, and you can't either criticize it or applaud it as a great season. It's just incomplete. So he's basically had one outstanding season, and he's recruiting extremely well. So it looks like that's going to continue, that he is going to be facing the Pac-12 South winner most of the time over the next 4 years, and probably beyond if he chooses to stay, because that's where his recruiting classes should be taking him. So, but 33-3, that's a bit much. 33-3 was Chip Kelly in the Pac-12.
Right. And from 09 to 14, they play in what? A Rose Bowl, a Fiesta Bowl, 2 Rose Bowls, a Fiesta Bowl, and then they play for 2 national championships. That's a pretty incredible run over a 6-year period.
Yes. Sure was.
So, I mean, but, you would think, though, with the conference and where it's at right now, it could be doable, though. I mean, it could be doable.
Sure. Yeah, and so that's where I think he is. Yep.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But again, that's
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mark.
It's almost like saying, is Ryan Day going to match Urban Meyer? And let's rewind 2 years.
Sure.
Based on the talent, the roster he was inheriting, based on the strength of the brand and everything, the money, the resources, everything. The reasonable answer is, yeah, he should be able to continue this if he's capable, and they are choosing him for a reason, and Urban Meyer is putting his blessing on this. So he seems to be that good, and then he's got all this to work with. He should be that good. But when you look at Urban Meyer's record, now Ryan Day is matching it to date, but it's not even 2 full seasons.
Sure.
Just the probability state that how can you maintain a 91% winning percentage? You pretty much can't do that anywhere. I know that it's done over stretches of time, but Nick Saban doesn't even have that good of a record at Alabama over his entire stay there. So to go 33-3, I'm just stating probabilities are that he can't do that in 4 years in the Pac-12.
See, the one thing that I would say would be with Ryan Day, I've always been a firm believer in this. I think you get more. I can evaluate him more, again, over a long period of time, because the obvious thing is by that period of time, he's had his own recruiting classes. Because basically in 2019, the team that was as talented an Ohio State team as I've ever seen, I mean, to a great degree, he was handed that by Urban Meyer, through his recruiting the great recruiting of 17 and 18, and it was a buildup of those classes that built that team. But you know what, though? A lot of Ohio State coaches have had success early on with the other guys' players. Mark, it goes all the way back to 1979 when Bruce inherited Woody Hayes' players. 2002, Jim Tressel wins with a lot of John Cooper's players. And then Meyer wins 24 games in a row with a lot of Jim Tressel's players.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So,
absolutely.
Last thing on Clay Helton. I'm going to make a real quick comparison here. Clay Helton reminds me of the Wayne Fonts of college football. What do you think about that comparison? Remember how everybody thought Wayne Fonts was going to be gone from the Lions in the 90s? And he just kind of kept on digging his way out and winning games and kind of sneaking into the playoffs with those Barry Sanders teams.
Mm-hmm. Sure, that would be the comparison. Sure. All right, David.
I just think, all right, Mark. Well, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Yep. Take care now. Bye-bye.
All right. We've been on the air for, like I say, 2.5 hours and about 5+ hours today. So Alabama football fan, roll tide. Appreciate that as being the capper for the night. Mark is the best in the business. Please hit that like button. Thank you so much. Louie, thank you so much for all the kind words and encouraging people to spread the word. Here's my thought. If a lot of you camp out here for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 45 minutes, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, plus the other shows, then other people will enjoy as well. We have a great shot at keeping this going for a long time if we build the channel. And a huge way you can do that is just let people know out there, hey, let's get out there and bring in college football fans that you guys are connected with on Twitter and Facebook and say, come join us. And here we are. And you guys know that I'm here just about every day at some point during the day. And we've got some other exciting live streams scheduled over the next few weeks, and Nebraska Live in particular coming up next Tuesday night. But I will be here tomorrow. Let's see, tomorrow at 4:30 and at 7 with Miami Football Talk. And then Friday as well. I think there's another one in there that I'm forgetting. But check out the content. We're going to release our Big Ten coaches rankings next, plus all the other content. If you've got a particular team that you love, head over to that channel because we've got 22 other channels, especially if we are trying to get that one to 1,000 in particular. That's a big milestone here on YouTube. Need to get these channels to 1,000. We only have about 5 of them out of 22 up to 1,000. So please help us out there. And again, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App for individual contributions. We would thank you so much for that. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. All right. Be looking out for the videos tomorrow. We'll be back here at 4:30 Eastern Time. Cheryl, thank you so much for your dedication. Cheryl's here as a moderator. Thankfully, now joined by Louie as moderators. We've got 9 other ones, but they've scattered. But thank you so much, Cheryl. Thank you now, Louie, for joining in. And you guys are amazing. I would take too long if I try to read off everybody's names who gets in here and contributes and just provides great feedback to me and calls the show as well. So thank you so much. We will see you soon. And again, it's tomorrow afternoon with Miami Football Talk.